Welcome to Kings of Kimuras, your one-stop podcast for everything from mats to the stars. Join us as we dive into the heart of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, explore the thrills of MMA, and groove to the beats of music. But that's not all. We're also venturing into the unknown, discussing aliens and the mysteries of the cosmos. And of course, we'll be shooting the breeze, sharing stories, and laughs along the way. Get ready for a wild ride from a universe of topics. Strap in and prepare to explore the world of BJJ, MMA, music, aliens, and more. Let's roll.
Hi guys, welcome to another Kings of Kimuras podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tony Trammell, also known as Uncle Tony on Instagram. I want to say thank you guys for helping us out by watching and listening and liking. But if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to our podcast so that we can reach as many people as possible, because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do here. Thank you guys, and we really appreciate it.
All right, guys, welcome to the Kings of Kimura podcast. This is episode 6B. We were actually just talking about this on the first part, how difficult it is to do a podcast. There's so many like little working parts. And while I'm sitting here talking about it, I look down and the microphone's not recording. I don't know when it happened because I did a sound check and everything was working well. Maybe when I set the headphones down, it like hit the button or something. But here we are. We got it going. You know, I think we really need to get an office where everything's set up and not touch. You know, that's the biggest difficulty is the tear down and put up, because there's so many little things. And then as we go deeper into this, you know, we'll have more cameras and more electronics, and you know, we just need a place where it sets up for sure.
Makes the process so much easier when you have it all set up for sure.
Yeah. So if there's anybody out there that has a office space with like potential room for studio, hit us up. We'll make you a sponsor of the podcast.
Yeah. Well, before we were so rudely interrupted by the microphone, we were talking about the IBJJF Nogi Grand Prix, the Absolute. We were kind of talking about first round matchups, who has the hardest first round matchup, and in my opinion, Heisem has probably the toughest first-round matchup because it's against Kainan Duarte, who is obviously a multiple-time world champion, multiple-time ADCC champion. So when the guy shows up in his best form, he's extremely hard to beat.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that consistently brings it. You know, I've seen a couple of times he's like not been in it mentally, you know, but it was always like against somebody that was way better than him, and maybe he was already beat before he even got to the mat.
Yeah, I think in the Marigali match, I don't think he really expected Marigali to come out with the hand fighting and just the general strategy to beat Kainan. I think for the most part is to try to catch him with a submission early, because the longer the match goes, the more it goes in his favor. But Marigali was able to, with hand fighting, with good counter wrestling, even some good guard play. I know he got taken down early in that match, but he worked his guard, got back up to his feet, and then was right away back on the hand fight. So I think if you're not going to try to sub him early, you have to try to beat him at his own game, which is to try to get you extremely tired, shut down all these positions that your opponent's trying to work. So,
yeah. Who do you think has the, let's say, the easiest route? I know there's like no easy guys in this, but I'm saying like the easiest route to win the whole thing.
Yeah, I think maybe Kainan. I think this is kind of set up to be. I don't know how the brackets are set, like who's on what side, but I definitely like Kainan's chances of winning this Grand Prix. Dante and El Monstro's another really good first round matchup. I think those guys are gonna have a banger match.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that there's actually some jiu-jitsu though. Like
For sure.
I'll be honest, like El Monstro is kind of known as a guy that just counter wrestles. Like he has some exciting matches for sure, but if a guy is like equally as good as him, it kind of negates everything.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm not the biggest fan. It's not that I don't like him. It's just if I had to like my choice between watching him and watching somebody that goes for the finish a lot more, I'm gonna go watch the guy that finishes more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the point of jiu-jitsu, right? It's like I've seen some clips of Danaher talking about it. He goes, wrestling and jiu-jitsu is a means to an end. So if we're spending a bunch of time and energy wrestling and not getting any closer to a submission, then like what's the point, right?
Yeah.
How many old school ADCC matches you see guys who are like heavy in their wrestling base just like either one, not engage at all, or pick and choose when they want to engage and then just immediately exit when there's any kind of threat at all. And it's like, dude, that's just a recipe for a boring match. Like if you're in the gym and you're only working what you're good at, which from some of these guys is wrestling, if you're only working that, then the other aspects of your game are not going to grow with it, and you're just not going to be a well-rounded athlete. And I think that's what all jiu-jitsu guys should strive to be. You don't have to be a Division I wrestler, but if you go against a Division I wrestler, what's your strategy going to be? Do you have a good enough front headlock to counter them? Do you have good enough back takes? If the guy does get you down, are you able to not be held down? Things like that are where you can beat somebody who's significantly better than you in one skill set, because jiu-jitsu is everything, right? Like you shoot a takedown on me, I get you in a front headlock. In wrestling, I hold you there for a few seconds, then we reset back on the feet. Well, there's none of that in jiu-jitsu. There's no stalemate, and then we reset back on the feet. We're going to keep going from here.
I think, honestly, let's say somebody's a way better wrestler than you, there's two strategies that I would, actually maybe three. You could always pull guard. But if we're thinking like you're going to stay on the feet, you could either shoot like a bad shot to force him to engage with you, or you could wait for them to shoot and then counter off of that. I think like that's a solid strategy, because let's say somebody does go for the front headlock, they're a wrestler, they go for that. There's ways to counter that, and now you're actually in closer to, scoring a position or submission position than you would be without those.
Yeah, absolutely.
And most jiu-jitsu guys, myself included, I don't have the best wrestling. Like all the wrestling that I learned is from either watching someone or, learning stuff on the fly. Because there's, most gyms you go to, it's like immediately, oh, we pull guard, or oh, we're going to start one guy down and one guy up.
Right.
We do a lot more stand-up stuff, but me being the coach is a lot harder to get more stand-up work in.
Right.
Like pretty much all my stand-up work has to come in off of live rounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, with the live rounds, you can't always expect people to want to stay on the feet,
Yeah,
especially
a lot of people don't.
if you start to develop a good stand-up game, like you have multiple attacks, like you have off balances, people are more likely to pull guard against you in rolls too. So for me, it's like I try to find people who, they might not be the best wrestlers. Like I said, you don't have to be a Division I wrestler, but at least they're willing to engage in the stand-up. So that way we can both get work in that aspect.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. I'm looking at the other side of this bracket, and I see Giancarlo. He probably is like the favorite on that side of the bracket. I would say it's probably going to be Kynan and Giancarlo. Potentially it could be Roosevelt. I don't really see anybody else on the left side of the bracket where Kynan is at that I feel like would make it to the end.
Yeah, I don't either.
I mean, Dante's really good, but with Kynan on that side of the bracket, you have to favor him.
Yeah,
he's an ADCC
absolutely.
champ, right? Nogi world champ. So I think that's the route that you go. Now, they threw a bunch of gi matches on here, and I mean, there's only really one that I would say I would look forward to watching, and that's Cade Rotolo. you know.
Because Cade's actually, willing to bring it to you, and he's not gonna play that typical stalling gi jiu-jitsu that a lot of these guys do.
Yeah, I just don't understand why they would make a Grand Prix no gi event, and then on the undercard they fill it with gi matches. Who are
Yeah,
these
it's a bit
people
strange.
that are excited about watching gi matches on television? Gi matches are notoriously boring, just because guys are only focused on winning off of sweep or advantage. And these are the same guys that are winning IBJJF. So.
Yeah, absolutely true. And not having heel hooks in the gi drastically changes a lot of these leg positions. If you put somebody in single leg X or you get them in double outside in the gi, you can't attack a heel hook.
Yeah.
If you could, I think we would see a lot more exciting matches, and I think it would help boost the sport. But obviously, heel hooks I don't think will ever be allowed in the gi, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, I think when you talk about heel hooks in the gi, there's a lot of friction that happens. I think what would happen, let's say you made heel hooks legal, all heel hooks legal, which is inside and outside, you're not going to see guys playing 50-50 as much, especially with that single leg with the lapel wrapped around it. You definitely won't see that foot dangling by the hip a lot. The positions will change because of what's allowed in the sport.
Right.
And it goes back to me just saying how boring gi matches are, because all guys want to do is hold positions,
Yeah.
There's some guys that are real technicians out there, but when you watch a lot of gi matches, it's repetitive, Pohada passing and not a lot of technique. And, they have grips, but it's a lot of jump passing, misdirection, pressure, where I feel like passing in no-gi has to be way more technical, because you can make a mistake and all of a sudden you're inside of a leg entanglement or you have your back taken.
Right. Additions of the false reap, all these different leg entries in no-gi that really you can't fully take advantage of in the gi are, gi versus no-gi. In those positions, they just change so drastically because of the submissions that are allowed and not allowed.
Yeah.
So if you guys are watching this and you don't think that heel hook should be allowed in the gi, you're part of the problem, okay? Just being honest.
Yeah, there's definitely two sides to that argument, man. I agree that doing an inside heel hook in the gi is dangerous, and I only say that because I've had somebody do that to me before. Get frustrated. This is when I was a blue belt. They got frustrated and just went inside heel hook. And it wasn't even a position that I was playing. It was a position they were playing. But I got my knee popped in it. And I think that, it's either you allow the heel hooks and the positions change, or you don't allow it and you don't allow those positions.
Right.
There's definitely other stuff that they don't allow. So I think that anything that's a typical stalling position should probably be done away with.
Or you could have it if you're in 50-50 for X amount of time, then heel hooks become legal,
Yeah, but then if you leave that up to a referee, you've got one of those referees that did the count for Francis Ngannou, where it's a 20-second count, and and really it should have only been an 8-second.
Right. You're this guy is counting pretty slow here. Yeah. That is true. Yeah. I mean, the more I feel like you allow the refs power, the more they have influence on the match. And I don't agree with that at all. The referee should be there to make sure that the competitors stay safe and don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Right. Make sure when a guy taps, the second that guy taps, you're breaking this up. You're making it an effort to break up the position.
Yeah, I think they have too much responsibility on the referee. He not only is he watching the match to see everything that's happening, but he's also got to keep track of points and advantages. And I think if you look at the way the ADCC does it, and I'm not saying their way is perfect because there's definitely flaws in there, but they have a table of judges.
Yeah,
it's not an even number. It's an odd number, and they are the ones that are deciding what was a point, what was not a point, what was a, let's say there was advantages, what is an advantage.
Right.
But there's the guy that's on the mat, his whole job is to keep the action going, keep the guys safe, relatively safe, keep everything clear, and keep the match on the mat.
Yeah. That's the responsibility of the ref.
Yeah.
And the more you start adding in points and advantages and it's kind of up to the ref whether it's stalling or not.
Yeah.
Dude, if you run straight back off the mat and the ref ain't giving you stalling, there's something wrong with the rules here.
Yeah.
Like, it has to be, and that goes back to the ref keeping the action going, right? Like, in wrestling, a lot of the time, like, I've seen guys take 2 steps. They 1-2 out of bounds, they hit them with stalling right away, or they put them on the shot clock if it's freestyle. So, something like that for jiu-jitsu would be amazing. And I know that there's some people out there that are like, well, the points system and the system that we have now is fine. And look at the submission-only system. Like, all you see now is guys trying to go for leg locks and only go for submissions. And they do have kind of a point there. But at least I know if these guys are both shooting out for legs, somebody's probably going to end up submitting, which is what we want to see anyway.
Right.
And, like, not every guy plays like that, you know? I could say the same thing about gi players. Like, okay, well, you guys only try to go 50-50, grab the lapel, and then sweep each other back and forth. It's more boring now because nobody's getting a submission.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it goes back to any position where you can, like, control the flow of the pace of the match is kind of boring, I mean, I'm not saying, like, I only want to see, like, mount or back control or leg entanglements. Like, there's some stuff in guard where you can attack, but you need to be attacking. You shouldn't be like pull to close guard and then just hang out there. Just like if somebody went to mount, and I know this is a position you don't have to advance, but if you're in mount, man, you got to be making that guy's life miserable to where he's exploding to give you an option to submit him. You know?
Absolutely.
And a lot of times guys get to mount and they just like control the guy's hands. And they're like watching the clock,
Yeah, it's like their goal is not to, like you said, get them exhausted over time to open up subs. It's to hold that position and make sure that this guy doesn't get to a position where they could potentially score points, like back to a guard. Yeah. So their whole goal is to just not give up points, and this makes the match extremely boring.
Yeah, I was coaching somebody in that Jiu-Jitsu World League a couple weeks ago where they train here, but they're not a student, and we have a few people like that. And I see that they're competing, so I'm like, oh, let me go over here and coach. Well, I'm listening to their coach, and their coach is telling them to stall the position. He's not saying stall, but he's like, hold this position. Don't go for a submission. I look at the score, and it's, like 20-0 or something, and there's 2 or 3 minutes left.
Hold the what are you talking about?
Are you literally going to hold this position for 3 minutes? Like, this guy has been abused already enough. Let's go ahead and end this. And so I go, hey, do this. Got him in a mounted triangle, and then hit that slot machine armbar. And it was over, like 20, 30 seconds after I came over there. But the other coach the entire time is yelling, like, don't do this, stay there. And I'm like, man, the whole point, especially in a small event, is to, like, do new things, not just, like, what's the point of winning? Are you really going to look back on that and, like, let's say you got a wall of medals. You're like, man, every one of those medals, I held every guy all the way to the finish of the match.
By one advantage.
Or would you rather... Yeah, I got a handful of gold medals, and every one of them I tried to go out there and, like, tap the guy. I think that is the better way to train and approach martial arts, because you want to approach life like that. You don't want to, life shouldn't be about, like, playing everything safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like jiu-jitsu shouldn't be. It should be trying to have the most fun, trying to do the best you can, and challenge yourself. And that's, in my opinion, like, what martial arts should be. And you can equate that to your life too,
100%. 100. That's a great point, and, like, it's very difficult to fake it when you're on the mat. Like, your real personality is going to start to come out when you start to feel that fatigue, when you start to breathe heavy. That's when, you know, like people say, you figure out what you're made of in those situations, you know, and you see a lot of guys, you know, they're okay with just winning by an advantage or winning by 2 points. You know, like the medals I have on my wall, I can look back and be proud of the performances I put on. Like, yeah, I don't have a gold medal at Worlds or Pans or these big tournaments, but the medals I do have from those tournaments, I worked extremely hard to get them, and I had a very high submission rate. Like the Nogi Pans medal, I think up until the final, I think I submitted everybody.
Yeah,
same thing with Nogi Worlds. Like I almost had a 100% submission rate, or I did, but then I obviously lost in the final in true Craig Jones fashion.
Yeah, I mean that's the way to play it, man. In my opinion, you know, because you don't want to look back and be like, damn, you know, like I won a lot of matches, but I won it by like being a better positionally controlling player instead of a submission. And I think if you get that reputation of like being a guy that subs people, it almost like you get in people's head and they play differently as opposed to like a guy that, man, I know this guy's only going to go out there and 50-50 sweep me back and forth, you know?
Yep.
And we know guys that have that reputation in the gi, obviously, not no gi.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're known as being a boring fighter. I mean, for me, medals were never that important. You know, what was more important is that I did it the way that I wanted to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you got then like in the Nogi Pans final, I got submitted, but I didn't sit and like cry about it. I was like, I looked back at the weekend and I was like, I had a great performance. My teammates performed well as well, and it's right back to the drawing board.
Yeah,
you know, like it's just about getting that. I think with a tournament like that, you really start to level up big time because you do put so much effort into the training. You obviously prepare yourself mentally for competition. You got to go there and actually compete. So there's a lot of moving parts, and when you put yourself through that process, you always come out a better competitor. And like for me personally, it makes me a better coach as well. Yeah. Because then I can go back and look at the things that I did wrong in those matches. I can come in and say, hey guys, let's try not to do this, because I know from experience, if you try this against somebody who is a high level, jiu-jitsu player, they're going to do X, Y, and Z. So, you know, it helps everybody, not just myself. Everybody in the gym benefits from me going out and competing.
Yeah, I mean, that was the same for me, and I always try to tell people that too. Going and doing a tournament is like the equivalent of doing 3 or 4 months of classes, because you can learn so much in such a short amount of time, and you'll probably perform some stuff that you don't normally do. You know, like things just kind of happen in the moment sometimes, and you know that's the great thing about competing. You know, it's not for everybody, but if you really want to find out like where your skill level is at, that's a good way to find it.
Oh yeah, that's like the best way to find out where you're actually at, for sure. And like, I know for us, we had some people as their first tournament, and you know, maybe they didn't do as well as they expected to do. And with people like that, it's all right. Either they're not gonna be as consistent as they were and start to fall off till eventually they just stop showing up, or they're gonna show up more and work harder. And you know, like I said, you kind of figure out what you're made of in those moments. And, you know, people are very ego driven. So when they lose something that they really put a lot of time and effort into, it's a little damaging to the ego. And so then you have to make a conscious decision. All right, am I going to let this just like put me in a hole and I'm not going to train consistently anymore? Or am I going to go in there? Am I go back even the next day sometimes and work even harder to try and get what I want, to try and achieve those goals.
For sure. Yeah, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
So thanks for listening to our podcast today. We really appreciate you guys. It makes all the difference to us to know that we have some listeners out there. And remember, share this with as many people as you can. Hope you guys like it, and make sure you comment below. Let us know in the YouTube comments what you guys want to hear us talk about on the next podcast. Thanks.
You know, we were just talking about people that were like competing for the first time and stuff, and like really finding out how difficult it is to compete. And then, you know, it kind of leads into this thing that I heard online where Jason House, who's like an MMA coach, was talking about how he would take a guy that has more talent, is a harder worker than somebody that has talent. Because the guys that have the talent, you know, they definitely like will go a long way, but typically they're like an individual player. You know, they're not a team guy. And when you're as a coach and you're trying to build something bigger, you know, you want those people that are willing to work hard, that maybe aren't as good in the beginning, but will like put the work in to become better, you know, and that's the type of atmosphere that you want to build as a coach, I feel like.
Absolutely. The hardest workers, if the guys with talent are slacking, those hard workers are going to catch them eventually. You know, like, I know especially in wrestling, I saw a lot of the time, guys who were just hard workers, super diligent. They were at every practice. They were not cutting it short on the runs. Like, they were doing everything right. And maybe at first they weren't beating the talented kids, but if the talented kids started to cut corners and shortcut, those hard workers start to close that gap extremely quick. And I really think only a very small percentage of really talented people put in the level of hard work that somebody without talent is putting in, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I feel like talented people sometimes will cut those corners, you know. They won't challenge themselves as much, you know. They're not willing to like be uncomfortable, really, you know. They'll do a lot, but when it comes down to like doing it all and doing it correctly, you know, sometimes it's like it's easier to cut those corners, you know. And we've seen that a lot, man. We've had a lot of those guys come through here, and not just here; they're all over the place, you know. And I think the key to being a good athlete is be willing to like listen to outside people. And I think that what makes this gym different from a lot of other gyms is that me as a head coach, I'm willing to learn. Like, not only do I watch instructionals continuously, but I will learn from somebody on the mat. You know, I'm a continual student. Whereas I feel like a lot of modern coaches, or not, I should say modern coaches, a lot of coaches in martial arts are kind of like set in one way. Like, you know, they'll learn new stuff, but they're selective on where they learn it from.
Right. Yeah. And like, as a coach, you want to obviously continue to learn as you grow into being a coach, because as you get settled, it's now not just about you anymore. Then it's about the rest of the team. Mm-hmm. So maybe you could get away with that as a competitor. You know, like we see a lot of guys who specialize in one area. Mm-hmm. But especially when you take more of a coaching responsibility, everybody's going to have their own different style. You know, I really pride myself in my ability when somebody comes up and asks me a question about a position, doesn't matter where it's from, standing, playing guard, passing guard, they can ask me these questions and I'll have a definitive answer for them, or at least an answer that I believe will work against high-level opponents and also low-level opponents equally. So
yeah, I think that's a part of, you know, being a good martial artist, man, is you don't necessarily have to know every technique and position, but if somebody shows you, you can say, oh, well, if you do that, they'll probably do this, and then you should do this to counter that.
Yeah.
You know? And there's a lot of coaches out there that are really good at that, but they're also like, I think my biggest point is like they don't learn, you know, like
absolutely
they're going to like, yeah, this is what you would do there, but they won't take an idea from somebody else, you know, that's from outside their circle.
Yeah.
And I've had coaches like that too, man, that, you know, they're like, very caught up into, these are the only principles of martial arts and we don't draw anything from anywhere. But for me, I like to watch wrestling. I like to watch MMA. I like to watch, a lot of different martial arts to get ideas. Just because a martial art has striking in it doesn't mean that I can't draw something from there,
Yeah, absolutely. Watching a lot of MMA has really kind of opened my eyes to like how striking can affect grappling and how the wall can affect grappling. And we even saw that with like the karate combat, with the slanted walls as opposed to straight walls. How can these positions change? Because Craig and Phil Rowe had a match, and Craig kind of just got the body lock, forced him to that slanted wall, and because it's slanted, Phil couldn't do those normal defenses that he could get away with a straight wall. And then Craig threw up that flying triangle because of the angle that the slanted wall provides. So, even though, most of your matches are not going to take place within this slanted wall kind of area, you can still learn a lot principles-wise from watching matches like that.
Yeah, it was pretty neat to see something like that. If you guys have never done any type of wall wrestling or wall grappling, it's completely different than grappling in an open area. Because if a guy is really good and he can pin you in the corner of a wall, really hard to get back up. I mean, and you don't want to stay. It's not like you're playing guard with your head pinned up against the wall. That's a tough position to be in. And, I would 99% of the time, I would say you need to get back up to your feet. But somebody that knows how to keep you in that position and pull your hips out from underneath you, man, it's so hard, And I could only imagine like that pit, because now you're not able to use your back against the outside wall as a frame to stand back up.
Right, because you're at such a bad position to try to walk because you're slanted like that. So you really don't have much, as opposed to when it's straight, you can build straight up, obviously. Yeah. But since it's slanted, you can't really do any of that.
Yeah.
I think even Joao Miao got a heel hook off of the wall.
Yeah,
right?
The guy couldn't spin out or anything.
Right, because he's in a position where, when you're trying to turn out of these leg entanglements, you want to start to build this, like where you go low and high, where you're like changing levels as you spin. But because of the wall, you just spin and you're constantly like up in the air, pretty much, if the wall wasn't there. And that made the heel hook seem like a lot easier.
Yeah, there's an interesting event. I'd like to see more stuff or more events like that. But
for sure.
Like, did they use that pit the first time that they had a karate combat?
Yeah, they used the pit. I think the first one was with the Wagner and Luke Griffith match.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a very surprising result. I didn't think that Wagner would go out and kind of like dog him like he did.
I mean, he kind of does that to everybody, like that aggressive style. But you think the size difference there would have like played a bigger role in, Luke potentially winning that match.
I mean, I guess you got to think too, right? Wagner trains with a lot of bigger guys like Cyborg and Roosevelt, all those guys that fight sports. He's trained with bigger guys his whole career,
Yeah.
And he's honestly made a career out of just being just a dog.
Yeah.
He's just gonna get in there and try to dog you. And like the match he had with Isaac Michel, they both tried to just dog each other, and it was a really exciting back and forth match. A lot of standing exchanges, a lot of exciting wrestling. You know, like if I wanted to show somebody wrestling or stand up for grappling, I would show them that match because it was an awesome match to watch, especially live.
Yeah,
watching it live was just
it was like
crazy.
nonstop, right, for the entire time. So yeah, it's crazy, man. Just one of those like matches that I probably need to go back and watch because it's hard to catch everything that happened in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so let's talk about some like what do you think it is more important on, let's say you had somebody that had won a major title or multiple major titles at every color belt and didn't win anything at black belt, or they win a couple of majors at black belt You know,
Yeah.
Me personally, like as somebody that is now a black belt and I competed in a lot of those, it's a lot easier to win in a lot of the color belts. You know, it's difficult.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's easy by any means. It's very hard, but compared to black belt,
Oh yeah.
you know,
Oh yeah.
because it's the difference between professional and amateur, in my opinion. Because when you get to black belt, there's guys that have been black belt longer than you. You know, it's not like you turn to a purple belt and like everybody's purple belts for 2 years or something, like 3 years or something.
Yeah, it's everybody is well within like a range of years trained, you know. Like you get some outliers in there, like with kids who have gone up through the kids belts and stuff. But for the most part, you're competing against people who have been training relatively the same period of time.
Yeah.
But once you get to black belt, like you said, there's guys who have been black belts longer than you've been training jiu-jitsu. So it's you know, it doesn't happen, I would say maybe extremely often unless you're a masters competitor. Like at the adult level, you're seeing a lot of like the younger guys coming up and taking out the guys who are a little bit older.
Sure.
But that does not mean by any means that the older guys can't go out there and, you know, show the young guns what's up.
I mean, look at Megaton. You know, what is he got, like Master 5 or something, Master 6, and he still does adult.
Yeah, still
and wins.
He's got a he's got a red and black belt now.
Yeah.
You know, that's how long that guy's been a black belt.
Yeah.
So,
At
and
least
he's
a
still
7th
going
degree.
out there. You know,
Yeah, and he's partying all night. You know, like that's another thing that, like, not only is he going out there and like destroying world-class black belts, but he's doing it on like minimal amount of sleep and a hangover.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's been like that his whole career. He's used to it at this point.
Yeah.
He's just gonna go out and do what he does.
Yeah, I mean, that's the type of guys that, you know, jiu-jitsu really brings, I guess. You know, there's a lot of like, I heard it recently, somebody talking about how like jiu-jitsu is filled with lunatics. You know?
Yeah.
More than
Filled
any other
with
martial
psychos.
arts. Like how many guys that own gyms are or shouldn't be around people or, you know, operating a business, you know, like they operate it more of like a cult, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's
That's
a
where it gets
huge
strange.
problem in jiu-jitsu too, right? It's
Yeah.
like, and you see that a little bit with wrestling, you know, like we saw it, well, in wrestling, like I didn't see it personally. Obviously I wasn't born yet, but like the late 80s, early 90s with the Foxcatcher team.
Oh yeah.
That's really the only instance I can think of like wrestling being kind of culty, because wrestling, it's so cutthroat in the United States that like by the time you're 30, you're probably already well on your way out.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of being a competitor. So, yeah, I didn't really see that much cultiness in wrestling, but man, in jiu-jitsu, it seems like, you know, if you take all the gyms like within Texas and you look at, okay, which ones are kind of like more culty, there's going to be a lot of them.
Yeah.
And usually it's the ones that you're like, man, I've never heard of this school before. Like, where is that at? Those are probably the ones that are the most culty because they don't go out and compete. You know, they don't do any cross training. So it's like, well, what's happening over
They
there?
don't allow anybody in the gym.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
the
they
coach
don't
is
allow.
not training with anybody. You know, we had an incident, not here, but I don't even want to say where it was at, but it was at a gym, and I was going there, and there was a guy online that had a gym in Austin, and it was like some type of catch wrestling, but they did jiu-jitsu too. And well, I'm training at this other gym one day, and this guy walks in, and I'm like, damn, that guy looks familiar. You know, where have I seen him before? And another guy that I knew who was a black belt had brought him in. I don't think he knew anything about like this guy's history. Well, he had like pretended to be a Japanese woman on Facebook to promote his gym, to like get more women to train. He was like messaging ladies and like, hey, you should come train at this gym. You know, like, I really enjoy it there. And
That is
like,
psychopathic.
it was nuts, man. And so he came to this gym that I was at, and he brought all these T-shirts Like he had made a bunch of T-shirts for his gym, and it was like something about women training, but he only was like giving it out to women. And I'm like, man, this is like, where do I know this guy from? And then I started thinking about it, like, oh, that's that guy. And so I told the instructor there, and the guy that brought him was like super defensive of him, but he didn't realize like how creepy this guy was. Well, it blew up online. I mean, it was a huge deal, man.
Oh my God.
And the guy got outed as this person, and like he was, I don't even know where the guy's at, you know. Hopefully he doesn't have social media, but he was doing this, like running this in Austin.
That would have been so funny if he pulled out the T-shirts and it had like the profile picture of that fake woman that he was pretending to be.
The guy was wearing a brown belt too, and I think he was trying to get that coach to promote him to black, like become a affiliate and then get promoted by him.
Oh, dude, what
and
a
when
terrible
I trained with
idea.
the guy, I'm like, man, there's no way this guy is a brown belt. I think I was just maybe a purple or a brown belt at the time. And when I trained with him, I'm like, there's no way this guy is the skill level that he says he is. You know,
dude, what a creepy guy, man. And even like Joe Rogan talks about that guy. I can't remember this guy's name, but he was like a fake black belt, and he ended up like going to prison because he murdered somebody.
Yeah,
right?
He did something where he had like went to the woods for the weekend. He had Joe Rogan drop him off or something, and he like left with a duffel bag. And when he came back, he didn't have the duffel bag, but he had a trophy. You heard that story, right? And like supposedly later on he had like murdered some people, you know, but he was like going around as a fake black belt. Eddie Bravo said like he trained with the guy, and he's like, there's no way this guy's a black belt. But it was at that time where you didn't see a lot of black belts. So if a guy was a black belt, you were like, you know, really
who are you under?
Sure, you know.
Yeah, the circle was like very, very small.
Yeah.
So it's like you had to have been trained with somebody like, you know, this back wall over here, like right here at the start, because there just wasn't that many.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced a few things like that. It's always like some creepy dude, you know, like running a gym trying to get over on people or like make them call him master, or, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just not interested in that, man. I don't want to be your master, you know. I don't want to be your guru. Like, just show up, train, get better, you know, be part of the team.
Right, because it's like
hard.
For me, it's like I don't want to try to transcend jiu-jitsu. Like that's an impossible feat, because there's millions of jiu-jitsu practitioners around the world, and the fact that you think your ego is so big that you're gonna like use jiu-jitsu to like try to promote yourself and be bigger than the sport itself, that's just crazy to me. You know, like I know that the impact I'm going to have on the sport relative is going to be not that much. You know, like maybe some people see my techniques and they steal a couple things here, and I wouldn't say steal, but just borrow them for the time being for their own system, you know, but I wouldn't ever, even like calling a technique something like, this is the Ramos choke. Like, dude, no, this is like, I saw somebody else do this and I kind of tried to make it my own, and this is what I came up with, you know, like I wouldn't ever try to call something mine, because my ego is not that big to where I would try to like transcend jiu-jitsu in that way.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you don't change jiu-jitsu or affect jiu-jitsu on like a huge worldwide scale, but you can always affect it in your area, your local area. And honestly, that's one of the more important things about martial arts, is like directly engaging with people that would otherwise not have engaged with you. You know, like providing them something that can potentially change their life or add confidence, you know?
Yeah. And the more culty your gym is like that, the less you get of that. Like how many people you see at these gyms, not only do they not improve in jiu-jitsu, but off the mat, they're just terrible people. You know, like they're very shady. They're very like creepy. You know, there's a ton of different instances, like not from personal experience, but I've read on Reddit, I've seen on Instagram of these people being like, yeah, I went to this gym. The coach didn't allow me to train there because he thought I was too dangerous, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, that's another big red flag, is not allowing other people in because of you want to look out for the safety of your guys.
Sure.
anytime I hear that, I go, okay, well, what are your guys doing that would make, let's say, a black belt who's coming in go 100% on them? Because if they're a disciplined, well-trained black belt and they want to just get good training in, they're probably not going to go 100% on your guys right away.
Sure.
What are your guys doing that is making these black belts go 100% where they're like trying to hurt them?
I would be more concerned about a lower belt.
Yeah,
coming
absolutely.
in and like rolling like an animal, because I've seen those guys before, and not everybody is a fit for every single gym. And it goes back to like, I want to see like how do they train, how do they interact with people, and then like make a judgment call on that.
Absolutely.
And all I ask from a student is that they like work their hardest. Whatever effort I put it back into you, put back into me. Like that loyalty is like a two-way street type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you're loyal, first you got to be loyal to yourself and the process and you trying to get yourself better. Because if you're not in it for that, then it's like, what are you doing? What's I feel like with people like that, there's always an ulterior motive,
Sure.
Like they come in to train, but they're not really putting in 100% effort. They're not really trying to make themselves better, but they're always like hanging around the gym. It's like, why are you here exactly? Like, is it just a social thing for you? Like, I understand that human beings kind of need that in their life, and jiu-jitsu is unique in that way because, how many times have we finished training and, we stick behind for like 30, 45 minutes sometimes just talking about different things, talking about some of the things that we talk about on this podcast, like a lot of the topics we discuss. I've had these conversations with people in this gym, a lot.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, I could see why somebody would stick around, but at the same time, you can't neglect the jiu-jitsu part for the social part.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it, and there are some people that only focus on the jiu-jitsu part and don't focus on the social part. And being part of a gym, I think, is more than just like showing up and training and leaving. And I'm not asking you to like, I'm not one of those guys like, no, it's family,
Yeah.
Like, I'm not Dom Toretto.
Yeah.
But I do believe in the community part of it, like come in, say hello to people, talk to people, don't just come in and do your own thing. And, those guys exist, and they, quite honestly, like most of the time they end up quitting, because they're not connected. And if you don't have that connection to the people you're training with, you probably don't enjoy training.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like you said, you don't have to like hang out with them all the time and like be around them 24/7. But at the same time, when everybody does get together, do we all get along? Do we all care about each other? Do we all care about each other's progress and goals? And I feel that way about everybody here. I want to see everybody achieve the things they want to, even though like they don't want to be a high level competitor. Great, man. That's awesome. Like they have other goals in mind that they're trying to achieve on a daily basis. So I'll do the best that I can to help them achieve that. And once people see that you're genuine in that way, not only are they going to come in more, but then hopefully you influence them to bring in other people. We've had some people who have been training here for like a year and a half, and they start bringing their coworkers or their friends, or they bring their wife, or they let somebody else know and they bring their kids. So it just, like you were saying before with the community aspect of it and making an impact in your local community, that's how you can do it, just by being genuine and genuinely caring about people's progress and goals.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key to martial arts, man. It's not just about the learning skills, it's about building better people.
Absolutely.
So, guys, I think with that, we can't top that,
Can't top that.
Yeah,
that's
so
gems right there.
we're going to go ahead and end it today. Again, we're still looking for sponsors. Thank you to Eager Ones. That's our number one sponsor, hooking us up with the camera. We still need some more stuff, we're looking for that sock sponsorship. Cover these ugly feet.
Yeah.
I put some socks on today. You got to pay me to take them off, and you got to pay Dom to put some on. So we appreciate it, guys, and we'll see you next time.
And that's a wrap for today's Kings of Kimuras episode. Thanks for joining us on this epic journey. Remember to keep training, stay curious, and always be ready for the next adventure. Until next time, keep your guards up and your minds open.